Let's talk about a running back who I think is being massively overlooked in 2026 drafts. He's 29 years old, and he's coming off a relatively quiet season. He's also joining a backfield with a talented young runner. When you hear all three of those things put together, that's not exactly a ringing endorsement. But now is time to make a case for David Montgomery, who is one of my must-draft running backs, especially when we're taking a look at that running back dead zone in 2026, especially at his current price. Because when you put all the pieces together, Montgomery has something fantasy managers are always looking for, and that is opportunity. And Houston may have created the perfect environment for him to finally cash in on that efficiency that we've seen throughout his time there in Detroit. I'm Matt Donnelly, and this is Fantasy Football Quick Hits. Now let's get into it. D'Amico Ryans, the head coach there in Houston, he already has called David Montgomery his number one back. That's got to be the biggest green flag you could possibly get, that ringing endorsement from your head coach. And when Ryans was asked more about Montgomery, he said, I see David as a number one back. Ryan went on to praise Montgomery's leadership, physicality, and his running style. Then he gave us a fantasy relevant part that we should be paying attention to. Having him with Woody Marks, that tandem of backs, you need it. We saw the success that the Lions had, and hopefully we're going to get the same results. Now, that's extremely important. Houston isn't necessarily trying to eliminate the committee. They're trying to recreate the Montgomery plus Gibbs type of dynamic there. That Sonic and Knuckles type backfield in Houston this season. And Montgomery is the veteran half of that equation. Houston, they didn't draft a running back in April. This is one of the biggest pieces for the Montgomery argument. Houston did not draft a running back. Instead, they attacked the offensive line. They used that first-round selection on Keelan Rutledge. Then they added Wyatt Teller and former offensive tackle Braden Smith from the Indianapolis Colts. Houston initially said, we're not here replacing running backs. We're fixing the environment around them. Again, this is already telling me that they feel good about these running backs, especially David Montgomery, and they want to make sure that they succeed. That's exactly what you want to see, and that's exactly what you want to bet at when we're looking at the running back position. Houston's run game has a massive regression potential. The Houston Texans offense, it was a problem in general last season. They finished near the bottom of the league in rushing efficiency and scored only 9 rushing touchdowns. So what do? They didn't go out there and draft the running back. They didn't go out there and try and coax Joe Mixon and fix his leg or give him a bionic leg. I don't know what the whole Joe Mixon thing is going, but they built that offensive line. And that's what matters because Montgomery isn't walking into that same environment that produced those Houston Texan running back rushing numbers from a season ago. The Houstons deliberately invested into fixing that issue. And if that offensive line improves from the bottom 5 run blocking unit in the league, Montgomery's efficiency could become extremely dangerous, and it could pay off for fantasy managers. Montgomery, he's already elite at turning snaps into fantasy production. We've seen this. Here's one of my favorite fantasy statistics out there, favorite fantasy nuggets, if you will. My good friend Scott Barrett, they're over at Fantasy Points. They've been tracking fantasy points per snap over the last 3 seasons. At number 1, Derrick Henry, 0.52. At number 2, Jahmyr Gibbs, 0.51. At number 3, Devon A. Chain at 0.5. And then right behind him, David Montgomery, 0.49. That's followed by James Cook, Christian McCaffrey, and yes, Bucky Irving. Now think about that. Montgomery comes into that 4th. He's sitting in the same efficiency neighborhood as Henry, Gibbs, Achane, Cook, and McCaffrey. And now we're adjusting that formula slightly. Elite efficiency plus limited opportunity in Detroit. And now we're changing that to elite efficiency plus potentially significant opportunity. That is the bet here. And the one thing Dave Montgomery is still doing, even now at 29 years of age, he's still creating explosive plays. Here's another statistic that supports the idea that Montgomery hasn't suddenly become some kind of plotter out there, some kind of charity case. In 2025, Montgomery produced 3 separate sequences of back-to-back carries of at least 10 yards. Now, for comparison, James Cook, one of the best running backs in fantasy, he did that 6 times. Achane, Swift, Breece Hall, they did that 5 times. Henry, Robinson, Walker, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Tony Pollard, Jordan Mason, they did that 4 times. So we got David Montgomery right there at 3. That's the same amount of times as Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Josh Jacobs. So when you hear Montgomery is just an aging power back, I'm not buying that. There is still explosiveness to be had. And he's leaving the Detroit committee there in the rearview mirror here. This is where everything starts to come together. Montgomery's 2025 season, it wasn't particularly exciting. 158 carries, 716 rushing yards, 4.5 yards per carry. I mean, that's not bad. 8 rushing touchdowns. But look beneath the surface, those 4.5 yards per carry, that was despite receiving only 158 rushing attempts. Why? I mean, we already talked about this. He was sharing a backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs. And as good as Montgomery happens to be, Jahmyr Gibbs is another notch above that. Montgomery wasn't necessarily efficient. He was just underutilized. Now that committee is gone. Up next, we're going to get into the part of the Montgomery argument that I think could make him a league-winning mid-round pick. We're talking touchdowns, Houston's defense, a rebuilt offensive line, and why Montgomery could finally get the volume and efficiency that he deserves. Montgomery has always been a touchdown machine, and this is another reason why I'm willing to overlook that age. I know that age cliff is starting to come, but at 29 years old, he's still got a year or two in redraft formats where he is still valuable. Montgomery has been incredibly productive around the goal line. Over the last 3 seasons, he's produced 13 touchdowns, 12 touchdowns, and then 8 touchdowns. Even though he only had 158 carries, he still scored those 8 touchdowns last season. That's the type of profile that you want when you're looking for a running back who doesn't need 300 touches to produce fantasy value. Now put him in Houston. The Texans, they only scored 9 rushing touchdowns as a team last season. There's obvious room for improvement. And if Montgomery becomes a primary short yardage goal line back, which he's projected to be, double-digit tutties are absolutely within his range of outcomes. Houston's defense could create the perfect storm for him, the game script that we desire. We're talking about an underrated part of this whole entire projection is how elite this Houston defense is. And if that defense performs anywhere close to expectations, Houston should have plenty of games where they can play from ahead or keep the games close enough where the running game still matters. And when that happens, when you're playing with the lead, you run the football, that's especially important for Montgomery. He's going to go out there and milk the clock. He's going to go out there and milk those extra yards. He's the type of back that you want when protecting a lead. He's physical. He's reliable. He runs behind his pass. He's excellent in short yardage, and he's experienced. Positive game scripts could be extremely valuable for his production. Training camp is even giving us more reasons to get behind this. We're also getting evidence that Montgomery isn't simply coasting into Houston as an aging running back. He's already flashed explosiveness during camp. Montgomery has already produced explosive plays, including an 80-yard touchdown reception from C.J. Stroud on a wheel route. That's another reminder that this isn't simply a goal line back. He can contribute in the passing. And if Houston actually uses him as a 3-down back that Ryans and the coaching staff have already described, that receiving work could provide an important fantasy floor. And the injuries around the league are making his roles more secure. We're talking about training camp injuries of Breece Hall, Jeremiah Love. Those have created uncertainty for other backfields. This makes the secure running back roles even more valuable right now. Montgomery isn't waiting for somebody else to get hurt. His opportunity already exists. The injuries elsewhere simply reinforce how valuable it is to have a veteran running back whose role is relatively secure ahead of week number 1. And Woody Marks, he doesn't kill Montgomery's value. No matter what you hear out there about Marks' involvement, the biggest objection here, but Woody Marks is there. Yeah, and that's okay. But he's not really. We saw what he did last season. D'Amico Ryans, he's already told us what Houston wants to do. Yeah, okay, they want a tandem, and that could be ideal if you want to rest Montgomery a little bit. Montgomery doesn't need 80 touches per game. He just needs the valuable touches. Give him the early down work. Give him the goal line carries, the short yardage work, receiving opportunities. Give him roughly 200 touches or a little bit more, and his efficiency and touchdown history are going to take care of the fantasy points. This is exactly what you want when we take a look at a hero running back. We take a look at running backs in that running back dead zone that could produce above their weight class. This is where Montgomery basically fits into any strategy that you want to put out there. You don't need him to be your RB1. You need him to be an RB2 with plenty of upside. Take your hero RB early, then build your wide receiver room, and then somewhere in the middle rounds, take David Montgomery. Now you've built an elite running back plus an efficient RB2 that has the touchdown upside without spending another premium pick on the position. And that's exactly what we're looking for. We'll call it the Montgomery formula here. Let's put this entire argument together here in what I can pretty much summarize in like 30 seconds, which I've already talked about for 8 minutes. Houston fixed the opportunity. They acquired Montgomery. Houston fixed the offensive line. We're talking about Rutledge, Teller, and Smith. Houston didn't add another significant running back. They didn't draft one, and the coach believes that he sees David Montgomery as more than just a true number 1 back. The efficiency, it's already elite. 0.49 fantasy points per snap over the last 3 years, top 4 amongst running backs. Explosive, already there. 3 back-to-back 10-plus yard carry sequences back in 2025. Touchdown history, 13, 12, 8. The game script environment could be excellent. Elite defense plus an improved offense creates more opportunities to play ahead. And that Detroit-type committee is gone. Even if he has to give some touches away to Woody Marks, he's not giving a Jahmyr Gibbs-type role away anywhere. The bottom line, David Montgomery doesn't need to become a better football player in 2026. He just needs the opportunities. And Houston has spent this offseason creating those opportunities by acquiring Montgomery, investing into that offensive line, and their coach already believes in the back that they have. We talked about those, that he's efficient. David Montgomery, I wouldn't doubt if he's going to have a career year. The argument is, what happens when you take one of the NFL's most efficient running backs, remove him from a committee, give him a rebuilt offensive line, goal line opportunities, and potentially positive game scripts? That's what we have in Montgomery. He's not a breakout bet. He's an opportunity bet right now. And those are some of my favorite bets to make in the middle rounds. And that's going to be it for today's episode of Fantasy Football Quick Hits. I'm Matt Donnelly, and if you're building your 2026 fantasy roster, don't make the mistake of drafting players based solely on what they did last year. Draft for opportunity. And David Montgomery might have one of the biggest opportunity upgrades in all of fantasy football. We'll see you next time.